Good morning, YouTube. Today, we're going to tune this Ferrari 458, and then we're going to take it to the dyno and see how much horsepower we've gained by modifying it.
So are you recording all of the nefarious activities?
If you're new to the channel, my name is Dan. This is my garage, and this channel is all about the supercar ownership experience, buying and selling them, maintaining them, DIY working them, and today we are going to tune this Ferrari 458. So as you know, we've already swapped out most of the exhaust on it, so we still have the factory headers, which we'll eventually swap out. So we've got some S-line test pipes and an S-line exhaust, and it sounds absolutely incredible. It really does. We're going to get this sucker out there, do some passes, get the microphone strapped up on it, and get the sounds of it, but we're going to wait until we get some tuning on this. Josh is on his way here. You guys may remember Josh from some of our other videos where we worked on these Ferraris. He knows his shit really well.
Told you, don't be a little bitch.
So he's gonna actually hook me up with the tune. We've got it all set up. So we're gonna tune this sucker, hopefully gain a decent amount of horsepower, and then I'm gonna take it out to Eurocharged ATX, put it on the dyno, and see what we can actually put down in the wheels. And we can compare it to Chris's 458. So he's got a similar tune, he's got a similar exhaust setup. We'll see if it produces similar horsepower numbers, which it hopefully should. Should be pretty awesome. We're gonna get to see some cool stuff and get to hear some awesome sounds. Okay, you guys remember Josh? You remember Josh. He actually can help you out. If you need his help, go to Instagram, go to Exotic Power and Performance. That's his website. Well, it's his Instagram. And anyway, he's gonna tune the car. So we're gonna download my tune onto his computer. It's gonna go up in the internet and do some stuff. And then he's gonna eventually get a new tune. And we're gonna put that onto my ECU and flash it and whatever. And
Download is fairly quick. It's the upload that takes.
forever.
Yeah.
You know, it's my really awesome binnacle.
Yeah, that's pretty custom.
Yeah. The beeps and beeps.
I kind of sound like that in the morning also.
Grony and beepy.
You know what that reminds me of? There's this bit with Nick Nolte. Droids, god damn it, beep beep.
What's that from?
Yeah, I have to pull it up. I don't remember.
I can see Nick Nolte's voice doing that, real raspy and
Yeah.
sound like he just smoked a full carton of cigarettes in 12 minutes.
So we got dual ECUs in these cars.
Yep.
So we have to read each one of them.
Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot.
So we start with ECU 1, communicating. Yep, pulls up your VIN, your hardware number, and your software number, so we know that the software and tool are communicating with the car and everything. Easy for me. I click the button here that says read. File name.
Ooh, that was a tough one.
Oh, I don't know if I can handle this.
Yeah.
Now it's going to connect to the server. Now it's doing its reading. It claims that that's it. And we did the read.
Okay. That was quick.
Some cars take a really long time. Like when we did the Aston Martin, you remember that?
Slow.
That one took forever to read.
5 minutes.
Yeah, that was a long read. Like when I try to do the 430 through the dongle, you can't. You have to pull them out and do a bench read with them. And it read really quickly and whatnot. And I was like, oh, cool. Like, that's neat. And then send it off and find out it read real quickly because it didn't pull any information. But,
Yeah.
but that's it. I'm not doing any of the actual coding itself.
Right.
I download the file from the car, I email it to the guys, and they basically open up your file, and then they open up the file that contains the tuned coding, and they line by line go through your software and delete a line and replace it with the tuned code, and they will recode your file that way, email it back to me, and then using this interface and software, we load it back into your engine ECUs. And the load takes a few minutes, obviously, because
now we got to write.
Yeah, exactly. Now we're actually writing. We're not just reading existing code. Day or two, and we should be back.
Badass.
Yeah, 30 horsepower with the push of a button.
I like that. Yeah, it's the cheapest horsepower you're going to get on these cars.
It really is.
You can't beat it.
Definitely the easiest horsepower.
Yeah, like not tuning these cars is kind of stupid, frankly.
It is because the tune's still super safe.
Yeah, they run better. Like, you actually get better fuel economy.
Right. So one of the things that I think people don't understand is that fuel has a cooling property to it. Okay? So the manufacturers do two things kind of intentionally. They will not put all of the ignition advanced timing in that the engine will accept. They back it off a few degrees to allow the possibility of bad fuel, lack of maintenance, things like that, to avoid detonation and hurting the engine. And ignition advance to a point creates horsepower. So you have your optimum timing, and then you kind of have a safe window below that, and then you've got a really safe window below that, and then you actually create more problems if you are too far away because you create extra heat. So the manufacturer will back your ignition timing off a little bit, but they'll also add extra fuel, right? So An ideal AFR ratio for peak horsepower is between 12.5 and 13.2, depending on the engine and the fuel and whatnot. But the manufacturers will tune it with like a 12.2 or an 11.8, let's say, AFR at wide open throttle, because that extra fuel makes sure that, again, if you have bad fuel, there's more than enough fuel molecules going through the motor to make sure that you get complete combustion, and the extra fuel running through the cylinder head in the exhaust system will actually help pull heat out, so that way the engine doesn't overheat and melt cats and detonate and do all kinds of bad things. That's great, but that costs horsepower.
Yep.
And as we found, the manufacturers are protecting their best interests, so they've left a lot of margin of safety in the engine tune. So we can add...
They're tuning it for the entire globe, basically.
Pretty much.
So you don't know if you're getting bullshit fuel from wherever Stan.
Exactly.
Versus, decent fuel from Shell down the road.
Yep. And California only gets 91 octane, whereas we have 93 here, and we might get 20% ethanol, whereas New York might only get 10% ethanol. There's 1,000 variables for fuel that the manufacturer can't account for, so they leave a bunch of room.
Hell, you might live in the high plains that's 7,000 feet, so totally different behavior than it is at sea level.
Yep. And the engine computers now are so intelligent, they can help accommodate for a lot of that and kind of self-trim themselves with fuel and timing, but they still build in a predetermined safety net, because manufacturer isn't going to make much money if they're having to put new engines in cars, so they give themselves plenty of room for safety. We found, though, we can really easily add a couple of degrees of timing and pull that air-fuel ratio out to a known safe ratio. Like if you remember on Loper's car,
it's still really safe.
That was like a 12.7 or something like that. It wasn't
aggressive at all.
It was a pretty reasonable AFR, and the car made an extra 30 horsepower.
Yep.
So that's an example there. If we can still keep them safe, and if it does get bad gas or high altitude or something, the computer senses knock and it senses temperatures and it senses misfires.
Some pull timing.
Yeah, it'll pull timing and add fuel and do what it needs to do to keep itself safe within reason anyway. By doing the tune, we're actually going to lean the mixture out to a safe level, which saves you some fuel economy, adding a little timing, which gives you a more complete burn. So again, a little more fuel economy, and that whole process also improves the responsiveness of the engine, and less soot out the exhaust and things like that. There are always those people you got to be careful about. The guys I like to work with that do programming will tell me straight up, there's other guys out there that advertise their tunes make more power. We have a very safe amount of power that we're willing to make. So the most horsepower and the highest rad line isn't always the most brilliant option, because those are guys that maybe don't really care if your shit gets hurt. They just want to razzle dazzle you with some cool numbers.
We got cool numbers. Ooh.
Yeah. And realistically, you're not going to know the difference between 5 or 10 horsepower. A real good rule of thumb is it takes about 10% improvement in power for it to be noticeable seat of pants.
Yeah.
So in this case, being 570 horse motor, this tune should be good for about 30 horse. Dan spends enough time in this car, he'll probably notice it. The biggest difference is going to be in the lower gears, where it remaps the throttles and stuff a little bit better, so we're getting better power in the lower gears. But once you get up top in your 5th, 6th, 7th gears,
might not notice it at all.
You might not.
Yeah.
You might. It depends on how in tune with the car you are.
I mean, we're only talking maybe like a 1/10 of a second on the quarter mile improvement.
Exactly.
It's not a whole lot to notice in your butt.
No, it's mostly if you have 2, 4, 5, 8 side by side and one has a tune.
I could probably just barely walk them.
Yeah.
It's like if we both stab the gas at the exact same moment.
Exactly.
I might be able to get like a fender on him by the end of a quarter mile.
Pretty much. Yeah, the car will run better. It'll liven it up a little bit.
Yep.
It'll add some character to it that it otherwise doesn't have. But yeah, you didn't, just transform the car into a 10-second quarter mile car.
Yeah.
We got a little more work to do first.
Day 2.
Okay, it's been, I don't know, like 2 days? Yeah. Something like that. 2 days. Josh is back, and he's got the good tune. So we're going to throw the tune on the computer, and theoretically, the car has more horsepower, just like that. Magic.
Pure mother magic, right? This shit'll blow your mother mind.
I mean,
And more fire.
Yes, fire is sweet. That's very Beavis of us.
Fire! 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 Fire!
So just like before, he's going to hook up his little dongle to the OBD port. It connects to his computer, and then the files go onto the computer.
Yeah, unlike the virtual download, which took no time at all, this is gonna
This may take a little while.
Yeah, this will take several minutes because now we're actually recoding the software.
Here's the.
Yeah, this.
Yep. Do we need to plug in the battery, or is it?
It's a good idea too.
Okay. All right. So Josh was just saying that, unlike what you would actually expect, once he programs the computer, we don't immediately just like fire up the car and test it. He said actually we got to let it sit for like an hour. Computers like, I don't know, do some computery stuff and talk to each other, and then we start up like an hour later. So
Yeah, one of the first cars I programmed with this tool, I did not do that, and a couple of days later the guy called me and said, so I was sitting at a light and my car just like, I don't remember specifically, like did a weird thing, you know, like you try to like stall or shut off, and I was like, I don't know, see if it does. And then it did again a day or two later. I ended up unloading the tune and flashing it back to stock, and then re-flashing it and letting it sit. That's the only time I've tested what happens when you don't do it the way you're supposed to do it, and it wasn't good, so we don't do it that way anymore.
yeah, that's the cool thing is if things go awry, we can re-flash it back to stock. So it's not like it's a big deal.
Correct, and unlike here to do the tune where it took a couple of days because we had to actually recode the computer and transfer files and whatnot, since there's a virtual image of this car's computers now in a cloud, when I open up the program, there's a literal button in this particular program that says back to stock, and I push it.
And then it goes back to stock.
Yeah, it just pulls
that's
the
badass.
tune out and puts the stock image back in, and that's it.
All right. While he does that, I'm gonna sit here.
A few moments later.
All right. Looks like it's loaded.
ECU 1 is loaded, right?
Right.
So now we got to key off and press OK and let it do its thing, and then
And
we'll
do the
wake the
second
car
one.
back up and go to ECU number 2
Oh,
and
man.
all over again.
Jeez, that did take a while.
It
That was
did.
a solid 5 minutes,
Yep.
at least. All right.
The next day.
Good morning, YouTube. It's the next day. So Josh tuned the car yesterday. We're going to take it out for its first drive since being tuned. We're still under quarantine, so I'm actually going to go pick up some lunch. It's a good excuse to drive the Ferrari. So we're going to go out. I don't think I'm going to beat on the car too hard. So hopefully within the next week or two, I'm going to be able to get it to the dyno. We'll be able to see how much horsepower it can do. And then we're really going to be able to hear this car. All right, let's go get some lunch. Okay, back from taking and driving the 458 to pick up lunch, which some good Thai food. Yeah, some guri curry. So the tune's not quite right. So Josh is actually on his way over. We're gonna retune it a little bit. It's kind of like pulsing or surging a little bit. So I think what happened is they tried to give it so the throttle bodies would blip a little to get it to crackle a little more, because we were trying to go like full bore stupid aggressive, and I think we went too far. So we gotta dial back that little blippy thing a little bit, because it's kind of pulsing or surging. So we're gonna get that smoothed out, and it makes it kind of hard to drive at slow speeds. Once Josh gets here, we'll fix it, and then I think we'll probably have it good on the second try, I'm hoping. Okay, Josh is back. He's gonna fix my problems.
You have problems?
I have problems.
What are your problems, Dan?
Well, I mean, I got lots of problems, but we're gonna talk about the car problems.
Oh yeah, this is normal guy. That's right. That's right. That's for the Meg edition. Where
Yes,
we'll talk about
yes.
the other problems.
She works on the other problems. So driving slow is difficult because it's
Throttle
almost
sensitivity.
yeah, it's almost like I'm fighting it. Like sometimes I would tap the gas and you could feel it like double tap the throttle.
Yeah.
It's the same thing when you downshift it. Every once in a while, instead of a single blip, it would go blip blip.
Yeah.
You know. But the other weird thing is like it almost surges. Like it's like when you're decelerating, instead of being like a constant deceleration, it's going.
Yeah.
You know. So it's almost there. It's so close.
So the short version of this is the way to get the pops and bangs is, right, you have ignition timing and you have fuel.
Yep.
Right? So you have optimum ignition advance, right? So you have 0 degrees top dead center, and ignition timing can be anywhere from negative, meaning it fires after top dead center, to advanced, which
Right.
is
Slightly
before, right? So advancing before gives you good power and all that sort of stuff. So usually the way we tune engines, and the way the factories definitely do, is when you let off the throttle, they trim as much fuel out as they can, and they'll advance. Let's say maximum timing advance for best power is 36 degrees before top dead center. When you're off throttle, the way the air is moving through the engine, it works totally different for ignition timing. So now we'll actually way over advance it to like 52, 54
Whoa.
degrees.
Okay.
Yeah, because of flame speed and all these sorts of things. So you super advance the timing, and that helps make sure that all the fuel is burnt before the piston starts to drop and the exhaust valve starts to open.
So it's quiet.
Yep, and clean.
Okay,
Clean
yeah.
and quiet. So that's why on old vintage carburetor cars, you always hear them pop and crackle off throttle.
yeah, 'cause they're not doing that.
Exactly. The carburation, it fuels how much it fuels. And
Well, especially
at
if it's a
times-
vacuum advance on the, it's still pulling vacuum, right?
Well, the opposite. With no vacuum advance, only mechanical advance, engine RPM determines how much timing it has. So
Oh, yeah,
once it
so-
spins out the maximum timing, let's say 32 degrees, that's all you have until the engine starts to slow down, and then you start to lose some of that advance.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
So they always snort and pop and crackle. When you do a vacuum advance, what that means is you shut the throttle, vacuum signal spikes, and now it pulls from 32 to
Oh,
52
yeah, yeah.
degrees of timing, and you get a much better combustion. So now instead of the raw fuel lighting off after the valve is open and kind of in the header pipe, it's lighting in the combustion chamber before the exhaust
Gotcha.
valve opens. And that's why it's quieter and cleaner.
Okay.
What all the manufacturers and what we're doing to get them to pop and crackle is when you come off the throttle, instead of having 52 degrees of advance, we'll pull it down to, let's say, -5 degrees advance. So now the fuel is lighting off inside the exhaust manifolds. That means raw fuel runs, piston comes down, valve opens, raw fuel comes out, and the heat in the header pipe lights the fuel off, and that's what
When you
gives
get
you
a
all the pops
big
and
pop
bangs.
and fire shooting out the back and
Exactly.
all sorts of theatrics.
Exactly. There's kind of two or three ways you can do that, right? You've got amplitude and you've got duration. Basically, you go into the map and you pick from 5,000 RPM to 2,000 RPM, and in the first column of throttle position, you set it all from 52 degrees advance to -5 degrees advance. And now from that window, you have so much lack of, retarded timing, it pops and crackles and pops and crackles. One of the things you can do to over accentuate that is these guys that write this program claim that they're swinging the timing.
Yeah.
So instead of it just being negative timing through that whole range, they're actually advancing in negative
Huh.
to get it to keep dumping more and more fuel. So that way you're not just kind of burning off what's in there until you run out. They just keep loading more fuel in there. That's the way they explained it. I kind of think what's happening is they're actually, because one of the tricks, like you said, you would do it when you drive anyways. You come off the throttle and
You
it pops
just,
and crackles.
yeah, blip the gas.
Yep. So I think the programmers are actually flipping the electronic throttle bodies
Yeah.
and getting it to dump fuel. So the timing is, they've probably gone from, let's say, -3 degrees to like -7 degrees to increase the amplitude.
Yeah.
But then they even further increase the amplitude. They're flipping the throttle so it keeps puking fuel in there while...
And that's why it's going surge and surge and
That's
surge.
what I believe. I
That's-
believe that's why we feel it surging so much.
It feels like it. That would totally explain it if that's what's going on.
Yeah. On Loper's car, we did 3 different flashes on his car with a really gnarly pops and bangs, and we tried to dial it back a couple of times. On the second reflash, the pops and bangs part of it was a lot better, and even the surging off throttle was a lot better, but he still had the hypersensitivity of the second you brushed the throttle, it would so overreact that the car was super herky jerky.
Gotcha. Yeah,
and,
yeah.
And
I was
really,
getting a little of that. Not too bad.
Lopers, it was we want everything we can get, right? Like this,
Yeah.
like the car's a wild animal. We want all of it, and then we had to cut it back a few times. Learning how aggressive all of it is for your tune, I said we just want a little more than stock. So I don't think yours is quite as bad as his, but we'll probably end up having to bring the pops and bangs attitude back to stock, if for no other reason than that tip-in sensitivity is so amplified it makes the car super unpleasant to drive.
Agreed.
It's very nervous.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great way to say it. It's nervous.
Yeah.
It's twitchy.
Yeah, you don't really know what it's gonna do when you touch the throttle.
It makes it driving not comfortable.
Yeah, which is one of the beautiful things about these dual clutch Ferraris is they got, unlike these cars where, you know, it's a man's car, it's a race car, it's very cumbersome and, you know, and you got to do it just right, and you got to do this and that and the other thing, that thing, you know, unless you're in race mode and got it, you know, really wound up, normal driving, it drives as nice as any other luxury car, so we want to bring some of that back.
Agreed.
Tomorrow for sure.
Okay, we're back. Well, Josh is back. Programming it again. He's got a different tune. This time it's going to not do the surges, we think, and all that sort of stuff.
We're going to keep all the power gains we got, but we're dialing back the pops and bangs tune part of it, so that should get rid of the surging and should go back to the same amount of pop and crackle it did before the flash.
Which was considerable.
Adequate, yeah.
Yeah, it's plenty. I'm not going to be disappointed. So basically we're just, now the tune is stripped down to just making it have more horsepower, and it's still taking care of the secondary O2s.
Yep. And the throttle response will still be improved. You'll still have a lot of
Yeah,
stuff.
because that was nice. That
Yeah.
was a really noticeable. It was much snappier.
Yep. Yeah, all we're doing is dialing back the off-throttle pops and bangs, as it's usually called. So what's nice is, since we did the original imaging of the computers, the coding guys have that master file. So when we want to make a change, I don't have to reread and send a new file.
Yeah.
So I sent them the master file. They wrote us the tune. We put it in. We want to make a change to the pops and bangs. They altered the original file and resent it. So this is not another read and then rewrite. This is just a write here.
Yeah, so we save a little time.
Yep. Yeah, saves me an extra trip.
Cool. Well, I think we need to go hear it, right? Yeah. Well, I don't know about you, but I think it sounds pretty damn epic. So what we need to do now is we need to get over to the dyno and see how much power we actually put down. So I'm gonna do that in another video. We're gonna schedule some dyno time. I'm not putting this video because I don't know when I can actually get over to the dyno given the current circumstances. I know you know what I'm talking about. In the meantime though, oh yes, this is awesome. So here's my suggestion is if you start modifying the exhaust in these cars, you really ought to look into doing a tune. You pick up quite a bit of horsepower, plus they can kind of customize it to do a little bit more things that you enjoy. I got a little bit more throttle response out of the car, which is awesome. Makes it just a little bit more sensitive, makes it so it reacts just a little bit stronger off the line. And I can tell you it did pick up some power. It just feels a little bit heftier. Changed the note of the exhaust a bit because it's now leaned out just a slight bit. So you know these factory tunes are really, really rich. So they lean them up a little bit. So that's gonna help make this sound a little bit better, perform better. We're actually gonna get better mileage, which is kind of stupid, but I mean, you know, we don't really care about mileage in this car, but you know, it does actually do that. The other thing is it takes care of any check engine light you might get because of certain things that you may have done to the exhaust. Huge thanks to Josh. You guys love Josh. Josh, thank you. If you need Josh to do any work on your cars or whatever, contact him. You can do so at Exotic Power and Performance. Link right here. But in the meantime, you guys are amazing. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate when you guys like, share, and subscribe. Those things do help out my channel, so thank you very much. We have more project cars coming your way. We have more cool DIY stuff. We're gonna be doing lots of car stuff. So you guys really want to stay tuned because it's gonna be sweet.